Okay. So this will be up in a few weeks, and it'll be up on my YouTube channel, which I need to upload my videos to. It's a lot of work running a podcast.
So much work. I have one as well, and so I totally empathize, and I'm so behind on like all my editing. So
Yeah. Yours is like something about eating, right?
Yeah, it's called Don't Eat Your Feelings.
Don't Eat Your Feelings. Yes, that's what it is. I'll mention that here in the intro.
Oh, thank you.
I used to do like Friday mindful, like mindfulness Friday, little 5-minute clips. And I talked about mindful eating one time. And I really liked talking about it. So I'm glad you're on. I'll do an intro and then we'll just get right into it and chat and just have a good conversation.
Awesome.
Cool.
Is there anything like your mission for this podcast? Like what is your...
Oh, yeah. So my audience is families. I base a lot of my questions around like, you know, how parents can, I guess for this, it'll be like how parents can be more aware of, you know, are you, now I know with like healthy eating and stuff, how are you with like, have you, any of your clients ever talked about their kids' eating habits and stuff?
Absolutely. I've actually coached recently a child, he had eczema really bad. And so we did elimination dieting to try to, and really like stress management to really help get that down.
Oh, sweet. So, we can talk about that. Okay,
yeah.
Sweet. All right. Yeah. So I'll just direct you and it'll be a good conversation. It'll make total sense. All right. So I'm just going to do a short intro and then we'll get right into it. So first off, again, Ellie, we talked a little bit before this, but I want to say I'm truly grateful for you coming on. And I messaged her on Instagram because I was looking at her posts and what she's about and what she talks about. And I was like, oh, this would be perfect to be on the Mindful Impact podcast. So I'm really grateful for you being here and sharing your knowledge with my audience. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you asked me to be on here and get to chat with you.
And so Ellie is a holistic health and weight loss coach. She's a wellness speaker and she's certified in this holistic health and weight loss coaching. She helps women break through sugar addiction, which we're going to talk about, men too, because I have a sugar addiction, binge eating, and learning how to fuel their bodies with food and not eating your feelings. A lot of her clients have lost weight, increased energy, increased confidence, break through that sugar and food addiction, avoid diabetes and heart disease, heal IBS, autoimmunity, and other leaky gut related disorders. So first off, I want to ask you, Ellie, in the morning right now, okay, when you wake up and your day started, what like really gets you, what makes your heart just shout out loud and sing and feel really good for the day?
Yeah, this is an awesome question. I guess so. Like right now, what is current for me right now? What is making me start saying?
Yes.
What's recently been coming up is really, I love teaching people and educating. And so that's one thing that really lights me up. And I think, but recently it's been learning these modalities to help me release I like recently have heard the verbiage of like bondage of self. So like being so in my own mind, concerned about my own self, like controlling outcomes, trying to control expectations of other people. And I just getting trapped in that and wanting to like doing healing work to release those kind of things and really coming from a place of waking up each day, just like I get to serve, like I want to contribute. How can I contribute? How can I make someone, even if it's just with my own, whatever I was given, unique gifts. We all have these unique gifts, these unique sparks. So like, what can I do to clear whatever's, maybe I wake up this morning with something blocked. Like, what can I do to clear that? So that's what I've been excited about exploring, is like recently did a Vedic meditation course, which has been so powerful, and just reading literature on a lot of this stuff. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's like currently what I wake up getting excited to learn and practice and then share. So that's kind of like the process.
I love that. Well, that goes right along with what you do. I mean, that's amazing. What you said, what was the meditation course that you started?
Yeah, it's called Vedic Meditation. So it's like transcendental meditation, if you've heard of TM.
Yes.
Yeah.
And have you dove into this for how long? Well, let me ask you this. Have you been a long time meditator? Is that new to you?
Been a long time meditator as far as just like mindfulness meditations, using apps, using breath work,
Yeah.
diving more into that as well. But this was very new to me, the Vedic style of meditation and this like transcendental. I was completely new to it.
What
And
was so new about it? Like, what was it that kind of was like, whoa?
yeah, that it sounds weird, but it's just like so easy. And it's unlike anything I've done. And it's the first time where I don't feel like I'm checking a box, like, okay, I did it today. Go Ellie. It's just like I literally wake up and I'm like I'm looking forward to it, like a cup of coffee. Like I'm like
Oh,
looking
beautiful.
forward to sit like doing and that's totally different than it's ever been. I've been the one that's like, okay, I need, like, I should meditate. I need to meditate.
Hmm.
Like this is just, it feels so different. And it sounds so weird, but
Yeah, but
it just,
what about it? Like, what is the practice? What about that TM practice that
yeah.
makes it different or feel weird? I'm curious.
Yeah. So it's basically, the structure of it is, you're given a mantra that's unique to you. And with that, it's kind of a vehicle in order to get you, like, what it's explained to me is like, you have this ocean. So we've got three parts of this ocean. So the top of it is like the choppy waves and it's kind of crazy. And that is our doing. Like that's like doing, focus, concentration, like you need to be taking action, that mind. And it's just like always like doing. So then we get into the actual waters where it starts to, like, at the top is choppy and kind of wavy. And then within the water, as you move down into the ocean, you're getting it's getting like calmer and calmer. Those
Yeah.
waves are, there's no movement at the bottom of the ocean. There's like peace and serenity. And
Yeah.
so we've got this, like, in between is the thinking, so the thinking mind. And then we have at the very bottom is the being, so where everything is um, just bliss. And it's like the thinking mind is not, I don't know. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm explaining this well.
This is awesome.
Okay. So then with the mantra isn't something to, like, other practices. By no means am I discounting mindfulness practice. They all have their own benefits,
Yeah.
but TM is described to, like, can get you 5 times deeper than sleep. With a 20-minute practice, you're releasing all this stress, these stored stressors in the body, because we store stress emotions from, like, our entire life, just like hundreds of thousands of stressful emotions. So we're using this mantra
Yeah.
to take us from the doing mind, and there's no, like, frequency to say it. You don't have to, like, you kind of say it in your head as a whisper, and you just follow it and continue to follow it. And it brings, in my mind, it just kind of like brings me down slowly into the being. And you'll notice your mind kind of like wander, like in mindfulness meditation, you'll notice you've been away, but it's just like, you just kind of, it's like, feels like a dream state. And then you just come back and you go to the mantra. And in my mind, I feel like it's like a little guide. It's like this
Yeah.
little guiding, and I'm just like following the mantra. And then I feel like I'm going into this land, like this mystical land. And then I get in the being, and then afterwards, you just like sit for 2 minutes after and release the mantra, and you're just kind of like in it. And honestly, I've only done it I literally did the course last week, so been kept up with the practice. So I haven't done it that
Yeah.
many times. But that being said, already I just noticed my state, and like I was having so much anxiety. First time I've ever experienced like actual, I don't even mean to cry. I didn't know like actual depression, which I never, like, that's just not who I associate myself. Like that's, and I was like, what is this? And like, so
Hmm.
this has been like, was a godsend.
Yeah.
So
That's beautiful. I appreciate your vulnerability there. That's amazing. Yeah. And that, it sounds like it came into your life at like the perfect time. And it's almost like like when you speak to the universe, it kind of speaks back, right? I love that. And yeah, I've heard with the transcendental meditation and the mantras, the experts say that you do get really deeper into your meditation than you ever have. And it brings out emotions like that, when you start talking about it, because sometimes when you talk about your practice like that, especially if it's so a newer type, you almost get into that mindset of it, and then it brings out emotions just like you talked about. And the reason I say that and know that is just because I've had so many meditation experts on the podcast and talk about that. So it's really awesome to see that. Like, it's beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing. That was
Oh,
really
thank
good.
you. Thank you for bringing it out. I haven't really expressed this. That's why, yeah, I guess I didn't know these emotions were going to come out. Because I'm by no means like an expert. I just, yeah.
Yeah.
All I
So
know.
I guess, well, going along with that, I mean, so you were saying like anxiety and feelings of depression really haven't been a part of your life, and suddenly like they started to creep in. And was it something, was there something that like, out of curiosity, was it something that happened in life, or was it like, was it just like this, your like phase almost of going through a different phase of life?
I think the phase of life
Yeah.
part, I'm 29
Yeah.
and yeah, single, no kids. And so there's like and there's no, I really haven't felt pressure on that part, but it's just like, is that external, like randomly it'll come up and I'm like, oh, maybe I should be like putting some attention here. But, and I think just starting a business, so I like shifted careers. I was a chemical engineer
Yeah.
and went into health coaching. And so growing a business is just like its own animal. And I think honestly now having some reflection time, it's just, I think the anxiety was coming from that need, like that I was trying to control everything. Like if I meet this person, then maybe this will happen. And just like all this stuff, it's like, let it go, let it go. Just do what, like letting that light come through, what inspires you, what are you feeling called to do, which is how I got into health coaching in the first place, was
Yeah.
like this immense passion. It was like this fire that I just had this excitement. And I think got to a place where with the business, like business wise, was just feeling like putting a lot of pressure on myself to be at a certain place that I maybe
Mm.
wasn't at yet. And then like, yeah. So I don't know if that answered your
That
question.
no, that no, that's great, because that I was curious just because I understand that feeling, where yeah, you put that pressure on yourself to be like, oh, I should, this is where it should be, or this is where I want it to be, and then you kind of you start stressing yourself out and giving yourself anxiety, and then one day you'll be like high on a kite, right, and then the next day it's this weird like this almost depression type, not really depression, but the feelings of that, right?
Yes.
And they creep in, and because I believe that because of your meditation practice, you were able to like jump on that pretty quickly and realize it. Whereas sometimes as humans, we might get stuck in that for a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year. But having that consistent practice helps with awareness of it and control, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, that was so cool that you shared that. I had no idea we were going to get into that. Like that was where this beginning was going to go, but it was really cool that you shared that. Would you mind actually, one of the things I was thinking about, would you mind sharing what your mantra is? You don't have to. I just,
Um, they told us, or like that it's kind of like something to keep personal to
you,
you, unique.
cool. No, don't share it then. Keep it, keep it, keep it. We don't want to do it. So with it, so where can somebody find this? It sounds like it's an impactful course. I might have to check it out. So where can we find that?
Yeah. So the woman who taught me, her name is Susan Chin. I actually met her through my podcast. She's the creator of Susie's Grain-Free Muffins.
Okay.
They're amazing. And so one of the things on my podcast, like I love finding these simple swaps for people. And so I was like, Susie's is one of my favorites because it's like real food ingredients, minimally processed. They're awesome. They're just grab and go, easy. So anyway, so interviewed her on my podcast and she started talking about her Vedic meditation. And she quit Wall Street to go do retreats in India and all these things, studying under Tom Knowles. And so they have, I guess there's a big network, so you can look under like meditating with Susan, and I can send you some links if you want to put them in your show notes or something for people.
Sure.
Um,
I was going to throw something in there for them to check it out, because sounded, somebody might, listen to that and say, whoa, okay, I need to check this out. If they're bringing
yeah,
out that, I need to check this out for sure.
absolutely. And it
Well, we'll
was,
talk about it. We can look at it up later. It's funny you said that. One of my mentors, David G, he actual meditation teacher. He quit Wall Street and became a meditation teacher too. So
that's
they're all
amazing.
coming from Wall Street. All the meditation teachers.
Yes, and it's
That's funny. So let's go into how well, I guess you kind of talked about it a little bit. You felt that calling to become, a health coach instead of the chemical engineer route. What, like during that transition, I guess for people listening, about like, how did your first client come about? Was it a pretty organic, and then you were like, oh, I helped this person, so let me just do it now? Is that how it worked?
So not quite. So it started out with like, so I was a sugar addict, binge eater my entire life, and had a really toxic relationship with food. I ended up, really didn't catch up with me until college when I started to gain weight. I gained like 30 pounds in college and was doing everything I knew to do to keep it off. So I was trying, like what we're preached at, lose, like move more, eat less, count calories. And it was just like trying to starve myself
Don't
basically.
eat carbs.
Don't eat carbs, yes. Trying to starve myself. And then I would end up like that worked for about a day. And then I'd end up binging on a bag of Hershey Kisses or like a jar of Nutella or whatever it was.
That sounds good.
and then and so it was just like it was so frustrating. And then it wasn't just the weight though. Then I started developing an autoimmune thyroid condition. So I was chronically fatigued. Like I'd gone from this hyperactive kid who could not sit still to someone who didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. And it was just like this big, just huge shift. And then I had shortness of breath issues. I was losing hair, digestive issues. So just kind of all these symptoms were creeping on, and I didn't understand what was going on. So I went to 6 different doctors, all of whom did the best they can, but really couldn't find anything wrong, and was just handed prescriptions for different symptoms. And I didn't want to take, I was like, I know this isn't it. And
Right.
so I went to a holistic practitioner, and this was about 8 years ago. And she was the only one that asked me what I was eating. So that's like, now I'm like mind blown when I think back. And she knew pretty much instantly it was the foods I was eating that was driving a lot of this. And thought I was doing pretty well. I was like whole wheat bread and low fat yogurts. And she knew, besides the sugar binges, like I thought I was doing well. But I found out a bunch of food sensitivities, and I got off all of the gluten, dairy, soy, and eggs. I got off all of those for 3 months, and I didn't feel hardly any better. And the reason was because I went to the allergy-free processed food. So like the gluten-free cakes and brownies and all this kind of like junk food that was quote unquote healthier because it was all like allergy-free.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I went, I actually did the whole 30, and those 30 days changed my world. Like it was all my symptoms went away.
What's Whole 30? Just explain that.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Whole 30. So an elimination. So it's not only eliminating like the gluten, dairy, soy. It was also just getting off the sugar, getting off of like the processed foods. It was eating real food for 30 days is basically what it is. And so that was, for me, that's what I needed. It was the sugar really was the remaining piece, and all the like the processed oils and all the things that were still causing inflammation, bringing my body down. And the main thing though was after those 30 days, it was the first time in my life that I didn't crave sugar and that I actually felt full from food, which I didn't know was a possible feeling. Like I would eat till my stomach would be distended. It would be like, and I could always eat more. The only reason I would stop is because mentally I knew, like, you've eaten so much, there's no way you're hungry. But my mind was always like, more please.
Couple Oreos wouldn't hurt.
Yes, exactly. And so this was just like a revelation. And then after those 30 days, I never went back. And as I said, it's been like 8 years. And then but within that time, I wanted to help people. So I was like, I had to like share this. And I got really obsessed with learning about it and the foods and like how they were affecting us. And I was on, I was like gung-ho paleo, just like everyone needs to be paleo because it worked for me. So obviously it's going to work for everyone else. And it's an awesome template. But now I've learned that we're all so bio-individual, and everything's, it shifts with your life. But that was the starting point. And then that led me into the health coaching, because I was a chemical engineer at the time and didn't really want to go back to school for nutrition, just because it was a different modality of nutrition. More like I wanted like the functional nutrition piece, and I didn't want to go back to like college for another 4 years.
Right.
So I found health coaching, and then I'm sorry, this is a really long-winded answer.
No, this is perfect. This is amazing.
My first clients were family. So my dad ended up doing my 90-day program, He lost 28 pounds. He got off high blood pressure medication. And that's probably still one of my favorite testimonials because
Yeah.
he did coaching with me about 4 years ago, and he's never gained it back. So this is just a lifestyle for him. And
Wow.
my parents are in Houston, and they went through Hurricane Harvey, and their house flooded. And that was about 8 months after he did the program. And so me and my sister were just it was divine timing, because just like, would he have been able to handle it? Like, would his body have been resilient enough to take on that stress without having a heart attack? Just like, it was so much, and he was so inflamed. Like, we look at pictures, and I feel like even 28 pounds maybe not even sound like that much, but if you look, it's just like he looks like a different human being. So it was just in his energy and his clarity, and
All from changing his food that he ate.
yes, that's all. I mean, and then the like mindful eating too, just not eating when he wasn't hungry. He learned like just swapping out cocktails. Like, he does like to drink alcohol. And so it's just like, okay, well, let's swap out, beer and like sweet cocktail drinks for like vodka soda, like things just like that weren't spiking his blood sugar, that weren't driving his
So
insulin.
just finding different options too with your eating habits. Oh, wow. That's awesome. And then it just grew from there. That's great. That's a great starting out. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. I've not like that. Hearing that, it's an incredible story, and I've never heard something like that where they started with, a dad or a brother or sister, and then grew from there. And that's the best testimonial in the world. I don't know if I could get if I could get my dad to prescribe to. How did it take much convincing to do that, or was he like, yeah, honey, I'll do it?
It wasn't like immediate. So I think I did have some other people beforehand, like a couple friends, because in the coaching program I did, we had to take people through our program before we could get certified.
Yeah.
And so I think he wasn't one of my two that I required to take through. But he saw what I was doing, and he's conscious. So he was like, okay, I need help. Like, so he was open to it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
He's kind of in that spot where he knew he needed it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sugar addiction a little more. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background. Can you hear him?
Yeah. Okay.
So this is me personally. I eat very mindfully. My wife has turned me into more of a healthy eater, and I make sure I'm aware of what I'm eating. However, I just can't, and I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that understand this too, avoid the sugar. Like, I feel like after every meal, I need an Oreo or two. I love my pastries. I go through the bake shop, and I have to try real hard at the store not to grab something off the donut shelf or something like that. Just like, not that I eat 100 of them, but just a little bit. I mean, I just feel like I always need that. And is that just because of sugars and all the different stuff that I eat? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, there's so many different factors here.
Yeah.
So there's the chemical, like, biology component, where it's like, if you're eating it, then it's pleasurable and your body wants it. And there's different things for certain people. They may have like some yeast overgrowth. There's literally yeast in your like candida that is like, give me sugar. So until you like heal that, then so that's like one. Some people may be experiencing that. For you, it's also the conditioning. So like you said, like every meal, like, I just need Oreos afterwards. Okay, so it's kind of like the Pavlov's dog, where it's like, you've got this your brain is just expecting it. You eat dinner, dessert, like that's just the default method. So what helps, like, one of my favorite strategies, this is because I used to have the same thing. It was like, I need something sweet after my meal. So it's just breaking the habit by giving yourself, like, creating a new neural pathway. So right now we've got, okay, I eat dinner and I eat dessert. Like,
sure,
that's happening. So your
that's
body,
the thing, yeah.
Yeah. So you're like salivating for dessert. So then what I did personally was I started to get club soda. Or you could do a tea, you could do whatever. Every single time I finished my meal, instead of choosing that dessert, I would choose club soda. And it was a signal to my brain, like, hey, the meal's over. And yeah, the first week, my brain was like, what the heck? Like, I still want that dessert. But it was like if you can get through just a couple of days in doing that, your brain will start to expect that next thing. So it's like this new post-meal ritual is what I call it. And so I like to tell people it's like a begging dog. If you
Yeah.
have, yeah, if you have a dog that you're feeding treats every single day when you get home. So it's coming home and every single day you're giving it a treat. And then all of a sudden one day you just don't. Like what's that dog gonna do?
Yeah, it's gonna cry and whine and beg until you give them a treat, right?
Yes. So you have to kind of expect that proactively. Like my brain's gonna beg and cry and give me
Uh,
excuses to why I should do it tomorrow and all these things, and set yourself up to be like, okay, this is coming. But then after a couple of days of not feeding the dog the treat, it's gonna stop begging because it's gonna stop expecting. Does that make
mm.
sense?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I love how you gave an actual like piece of advice that you could use and take action with. And it's like club soda, or my mind went to like sparkling water, flavored sparkling water drink, which is no sugar or anything in it.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, so just have some of that after dinner and or even lunch sometimes. Like today I had lunch. I had a healthy lunch and then I had two Oreos. I did two Oreos after my, it's embarrassing to say out loud. It's like not embarrassing, but it's like, damn, why did so and then I'm bringing that up because I know that I'm not the only person that deals with that, right? So that's and even somebody that
Yeah.
eat, yeah. I mean, I eat pretty darn healthy too, other than that. So I'm just like this one thing. And I think a lot of it too, do you have deal with clients that replace one thing for another? So they'll stop drinking alcohol and then all of a sudden they eat way more sugar than they ever have, or some stuff like that. Does that happen to people?
Oh, absolutely. It's like trading one compulsion for another compulsion.
Right.
And so it's starting to bring that awareness to, I think one of the biggest questions like is just getting off autopilot and tuning into like why am with food. It's just like the biggest question is, am I actually hungry? Why am I reaching for this right now? What just compelled me to reach for food? And then noticing if it's another behavior, if it's like, what just compelled me to even like be on my phone right now, like that, just that impulse to like grab my phone. It's like, oh, because I'm in line and I'm feeling a little awkward, so let me just like pull out my phone. Like, so it's just like starting to get off that autopilot and being aware and without judgment of what you're doing. Does that make sense?
So yeah, it makes total sense. So you're helping people become aware of why they're grabbing it, their emotions behind it, and what they're doing. It's, and I think that's important because even like it's somebody that my ego thinks that I'm so aware now that I've been meditating every day for almost 18 months or whatever, and so that creeps up like, oh yeah, I'm aware of everything. And I had a friend said, oh dude, half the reason why you eat so much sugar now, way more than you did before, because love sugar, but all of a sudden it's like increased 2 or 3 times. He's like, because you stopped drinking alcohol. You used to always have wine and bourbon. I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was aware of everything. I guess you know what I mean? I mean, I know I'm not, but so that's why I wanted to ask you that. That's really, and somebody listening might go, oh, wow. Like that makes sense now. And that's why I wanted to bring that up. So thank
Yes,
you
no,
for that.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think it also fluctuates not only with like giving up maybe like alcohol, but it's an outlet for your stress. So it's going to fluctuate. Your cravings are going to fluctuate with your stress. Reaching for food is going to fluctuate with your
Mm.
stress. So it's like, what can you do proactively around stress management to help yourself? Like where, anything that you can do that's personally relaxing to you, or even just lack of joy. Like sometimes I know I have a lot of clients that it's just like they're using food because that's their source of pleasure. And it's because maybe in their life they're not experiencing as much pleasure or joy.
Mm.
It's like, where can I, like, what do I like to do that I haven't been doing for myself?
And how do you help people find that?
It's just exploring. And
Yeah.
so like I have a client recently and she just like dance and she loves dance. And so it's just like, okay, can we find an adult class that you could take and you literally just put on music in your kitchen? Just like it doesn't have to be anything formal, or it's just like give yourself a little something and just try it. And it's kind of an experiment. And I think it's also, I love that you share this too, because it doesn't have to be an all or none. So like with you with Oreos, like starting I'm all about the simple swaps. So like, what could you up level that swap, like the Oreos to? Because, and knowing why, like, why should I not be reaching for Oreos? And I shouldn't say shouldn't, like,
Right.
but like, okay, I recognize that these Oreos are not like high energy foods. They're not really doing, serving my body well. So I
Right.
can eat them, but like, do I actually want this for myself? And so what could I choose instead that would still feel like dark chocolate? There's those Susie's muffins I mentioned. They have a double chocolate muffin. It's awesome. Something like that that can be the start to kind of shift you off of processed food. Like, let it be an evolution. It doesn't have to be like, okay, I can't have any Oreos anymore. I'm just going to meditate here for 5 minutes, because that does not seem to work usually. So
So
having the
dark chocolate's a good option. Okay.
yeah.
What about you said, you just said something interesting. You said eating for energy, it's not going to give me energy. How can we, I don't know if this is even an answerable question, but how can we be mindful in each meal of like, is this going to bring me energy, and or is this not? Is there techniques around that, or?
Yes. And the first thing is just self-awareness. And I think this is like one thing I had to majorly learn through this coaching process is that we, again, are so bio-individual, and every single day is different. What our body needs every day is different. Some foods we can tolerate at one period in our life. Some periods we're having a lot of other factors of stress in our body. So our body, it can cause leaky gut. Like if you had to take an antibiotic and then all of a sudden you can't tolerate something. So it's just noticing. First off, is just like, okay, I eat this and how do I feel? Oh, I feel kind of groggy and sluggish and slow. Like what kind of starting to identify your personal, like, which foods give me energy, which ones take away.
Yeah.
And most of us, like, there's a lot of common themes with people. So typically processed food, things with a ton of sugar may spike us up, and then an hour later we're crashing. Or super carby meals, or tons of bread, tons of gluten. Notice if you feel bloated, if you feel puffy. And it's kind of reframing of like, you get to choose to feel awesome. And so it's like, what am I going to put in my body to feel so good? Like, I could eat this whole roll of Oreos, but is that really like what I want to feel?
It makes so much sense. So it's like, it's almost like, okay, because I know, I mean, we all know after we have a delicious salad with vegetables and stuff in it, and how we feel afterwards, we have energy, we feel pretty full, and we're ready to go, compared to having a double cheeseburger, right? And then how do we feel afterwards? So if you can put yourself as you're talking here, if you can put yourself in the place of, okay, your mind, and how am I going to feel 20 minutes after I eat this meal? Is that where I want to be? And you can almost make a choice then to knowing how you will feel later on whether you want to eat that or not. Did I catch that right, of kind of what you were saying?
Nailed it. Yes. Like, perfect explanation. Exactly. And honestly, this is what I did. Like, that is the method I used personally to overcome binge eating and overeating. Because I was constantly, even if I was eating the healthiest foods, like I did Whole30, but I was still using food to numb out. I was still way overeating because that was conditioning. So even though it was healthy food, it was just like eating out of boredom and just wanting to keep going. And then I'd get so full and feel so miserable. And so it was doing that future projection of, okay, I could keep eating and that's okay. But like, I know if I keep eating, I'm gonna just feel so tired, so like not gonna want to do anything. And like, is that what I want? And that was what started really helping me stop. And it wasn't like, no, you shouldn't eat anymore, because that just makes us want to numb out more and eat more. That
Right.
like, wait,
Add shame on top of shame. Right. Yeah. We don't want to do that.
yeah. So it's just that conscious choice, and it's a
Uh,
practice, and not to have so much compassion for yourself, because I think I have fallen into this too, where it's like, okay, we start a new habit and we're doing well and we're not overeating, or we're not eating the sugar, and then we have like one slip and feel like everything is ruined, and none of the weeks of work I just did mean anything, and I'm back on this old pattern and I'm never going to get off. And it's like, if you can just release that and be
Yeah.
like, oh, a slip, okay, but I'm consciously like, but I in this this is a new moment that I can just choose again and start this, go back on the new path,
Yeah.
and there's nothing lost. It's just like and to have compassion for yourself, because our brains default to the old patterns because it's what's easy. It's the path of least resistance. It's this well-paved road that doesn't take much. And so when there is a ton of stress, it is so easy to fall back into that, because you literally just, your brain's just like, I can't right now, I'm falling back. And just to be like, okay, well, observe it. What was going on for me? How could I set myself up better to be able to better manage that stress so I don't end up going back to my old ways? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that was really good. That was very well said and makes total sense. And that, yeah, that I love all that you just said. And I'm sure people listening will love that too. What about, so let me ask you, I'm just curious. So you like don't eat any processed sugar, like you never have in years. You just completely avoid it.
Um, through that,
It's, it's impressive. I just think,
I I I do, like, I'm very like, my non-negotiables, it's kind of like creating boundaries in your life. Like my
yeah,
non-negotiables, like I will not eat gluten, I will not eat dairy,
yeah.
I will not eat grains, just because I know I just don't want those in my body and I don't miss them.
So there's only
Um,
certain restaurants you can go to, right? Obviously, right? When
yeah,
that's the case.
I usually can find something just like a meat or a vegetable at a restaurant and
Okay.
just, yeah, there's always ways around it. And I usually eat before I go to restaurants just so I'm not like feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm dying.
I've heard of that before from someone that's similar. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And as far as sugar goes, like, so I just awareness of sugar. Like in the beginning, I very much was adamant, like no, like for a couple years, because even a little bit would just, it was like it would light up my sugar dragon. And
Mm,
I hadn't had my mindfulness tools developed yet, because again, it's reconditioning and reconditioning. So a lot of times I would have some, and then it would just like, even though it was always like paleo, it was still like, even that sugar just made me like, I'd end up, I want more paleo cookies and I want more dried fruit. And it was just like, I didn't like that. I didn't like that it was doing that. So it was easier for me to abstain than to have a little bit. But then now I've shifted into being able to have like one bite of dark chocolate and I'm fine. But
yeah.
as far as like processed food, like not processed sugar in the way of maybe like an Oreo or something.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And what, like, I guess I haven't even asked this yet, but what happens to your body when we have all this sugar? Like, why do we need to not, but why do we need to be aware of not eating as much or at all, really?
Yeah, it's such
Sugar.
a good question. And it's, again, this is different for everybody. So, but for most people, when we eat sugar, it spikes and we get a big blood sugar spike, and that spikes our insulin. And our insulin is our fat storage hormone, basically telling our body to store fat, store fat, store fat. And then we get to a point where if we keep getting these huge sugar spikes, then we are getting these chronically high levels of insulin and stuck in this like fat storage mode. So when we're in that mode, we're unable to burn fat for energy. So then we're eating hand to mouth, like we're eating more sugar, we're craving more sugar, we're fueling this insulin resistance. So this, basically you're becoming more and more intolerant to your insulin, if that makes sense. So your body has to produce more and more to get the sugar out of the blood.
Mm,
So it's like more and more and more until you can't produce enough to get your blood sugar down, and that's when people are becoming type 2 diabetic and having to
uh,
take insulin shots to get the blood sugar down. And then also that insulin, when you have chronically high insulin, it blocks your other hormone called leptin, which is your satiety hormone. And now this makes so much sense to me now when I mentioned like I never felt full, and it was because I was eating so much sugar, constantly spiking my insulin blocking leptin, meaning like after you eat a meal, you get your leptin levels go up, and your body sees that and is like, okay, we're full, turn down the hunger hormones and rev up your metabolism so you can burn this energy. And then in between meals, your leptin levels fall, and you and your brain loses that leptin signal, and then your revs up your hunger hormones so that you go find food and starts conserving your energy. So slows down your metabolism so that you can make it until you find food. Like it's survival. So it's just like up and down. That's the natural flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when if we're eating tons of sugar all the time and we're spiking our insulin, we get into this insulin resistance and that insulin's blocking leptin, then in between meals or like right after you eat, you should feel full.
Yeah.
But if your brain can't see that or the leptin, then it thinks you're still starving. So it's like, keep eating, rev up the hunger hormones. Oh, why did I just eat this huge bowl of pasta? I feel bloated, so bloated. And then I get home and I'm in the pantry looking for cookies. And so, right? And that's
I
what's
raised my
happening
hand.
here. So it's like, I think it's so powerful. Yes, to just know this and be like, okay, when I feel that feeling of like, cannot get satiated, like this is the mechanism that's going on. And that's just one piece. So this is like the big part of the obesity epidemic. And it's sad because if we're told just to eat less and move more, but you're still eating these foods that are spiking insulin,
Yeah.
then eating less is just eventually is going to fall apart because your body thinks you're starving. So eating less is just making it worse. So it's like, let me restrict myself. And then you end up binging and overeating. And so also, sugar fuels chronic disease and inflammation. So that 1/3 of cancers are fueled by sugar, fueled by insulin. That includes breast cancer and colon cancer. I mean, the diabetes or not diabetes, dementia is being termed as type 3 diabetes. Have you heard that? It basically,
No, that's new to me. I've never
yeah.
heard that.
So it's like insulin resistance of the brain and not being able to utilize glucose in the right ways and just a state of inflammation. And there's so many factors here because there's so many pieces of stress and things that are driving inflammation, all the environmental toxins we're exposed to. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but it's just like, okay, we've got this bathtub and we're able to tolerate so many things, so many stress triggers, and we can take some and we're draining some out. But what can we do? What pieces can we control that can help reduce that load? So maybe we can't reduce all the environmental toxins we're exposed to, but we don't have to eat Oreos every day, right? We don't have to, I don't even mean to harp
No,
on you.
I know.
Yeah. But it's just like conscious choice. And it doesn't mean a bite of sugar is going to just ruin everything.
Right.
It's just being able to be like, how much sugar am I eating? That's the first step.
Right.
And can I make simple swaps to lower this down and add more fiber to help balance my blood sugar, add in some good clean lean protein to balance my blood sugar.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing, is just like, oh, okay, I ate, maybe I'll only eat half of this chocolate bar today at this time.
And a lot of what you're saying is just being, having that awareness, which is super important. What about, I don't think this is a huge shift, but what about, I was curious, have you ever fasted before, or do you recommend fasting?
Yeah. So, I intermittent fast, just have a kind of like a 8-16 window personally.
Oh, okay. So that's. Well, what about so intermittent fasting is one thing. So what about an actual 3 days, all water, nothing else, or something like that?
Yeah. So I've only personally done a 24-hour and it was great. And I love that you're bringing this up because this is something I very much feel like it keeps coming up and that I want to do an extended fast, because I've met some people recently that have done it and they've just had such just power, more spiritual awakening, and just energy through the roof. And just so it can be so healing. And what I've researched on it, and especially with people with diabetes and insulin resistance or pre-diabetes, doing not necessarily 3-day fast, but intermittent fasting. So creating those long periods between eating so that it's allowing the insulin to come down. So that's the main thing, is just getting your insulin down. And so doing that either by super low carb or by fasting. Yeah. And it totally depends on the person, because if you're super adrenally fatigued and in certain conditions, fasting is just another stress on the body. Yeah. So it's just dependent on who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything. I mean, obviously everything is dependent on the individual, right? So everybody listening, and I've I have the best shape and the best feeling, the best energy I've ever had is the year I did about almost a year straight of intermittent fasting where I didn't eat until 11:30 and then stopped eating at 6:30, 7 o'clock. Right. That's what you mean by intermittent, right?
Yeah.
And then kids came in the picture and it's just a lot harder to stay consistent with it when you're, just feeding all that stuff. So, but yeah, that's awesome. And that's great.
What did you
Um,
notice with your, so you said like most energy?
Oh yeah, I mean the energy was like honestly was through the like you could totally tell the difference between how I felt. And it was energy like how you feel like the energy like you're giving out and you're receiving just in general. And then you end up after like 4 or 5 days, you end up like the first 4 or 5 days are tough, but after that you just don't want to even eat until 11, right? I
Yes.
mean, it just kicks in and you're like, oh, okay, I'm good until 11. And then you just, the hard part is just being aware of like, okay, eat dinner and then stop eating at 7. You know what I mean? Like, don't just like look at, like, you have to be aware of the clock and just stop, like just no eating. And then you have better sleep. I sleep pretty well anyway, but you notice how much better it is in sleeping. And then like that extra, and I'm not like a huge self-conscious person when it comes to it. I'm naturally kind of skinny, but the extra fat that was on my body kind of slipped off. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So these are the kind of results I saw from it personally. Um, and and it was nice. But it's again, like I only do it. I'm not gonna, if I'm not gonna be able to be consistent with it with something, I usually just don't do it. So it's right now just with life, it's hard for me to be consistent with it unless I really just take a stand and say I'm gonna go back to it. And I haven't felt the need to or want. You know what I mean. It's just different phase right now I'm going through. So I just haven't gotten back to it. But yeah, you've
Oh,
been doing it for a while.
yeah, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I think it's such a good thing to know like that. It's crazy how our bodies like within a couple days, like you think those first couple days, it's like, oh, I'm so like I'm hungry. I need to eat this time, but that's such conditioning because then like you said, then after a couple days, it's like, oh, it's 11. Like I didn't. You just stop thinking about it, and so
Yep.
it's like
It's the
being
same
aware that
idea.
your mind can have those thoughts. Like, no, wait, we need it, but like you really don't.
You're right. You're right. And it's so cool. I mean, this is stuff that can be contrived. I don't know if it's a real word or whatever, but through all different facets of life, right? Because for example, I never thought I was a morning person. This for me, I never thought I was a morning person. And then I read this book by Hale Elrod called Morning Miracles. And I started waking up at 5 and doing a routine, 5 a.m. And after about, I don't know, 14 days of it, I became a morning person. I was like, boom, 5, here we go. All right, here we go. Felt the energy. I felt, and again, it was because I was preconditioned that, oh, I need to sleep in. Oh, I need to, and some people do need like get those extra hours of sleep are super important for their energy. But for me, I was like, oh, okay, this is totally different. Now I've since fallen off of that. I did it for almost 13 months straight, and I've been on and off the past couple months. Again, it's just the excuse life, kids. It's just a total, like my son started getting up at 5. So now I'm like, oh, great. I was getting up at 5. Now, like, we're getting up together, and I don't want to feel bad if my wife is just with him the whole time. And so now I started doing it some days and not. So it just, and the thing is with that stuff, and I won't talk too much here. You said it earlier. If you make a quote unquote mistake or you have sugar and you didn't want to, it's okay. Like, don't shame yourself, don't beat yourself up. And that's what I had to learn through this process of like, it's okay. Like, this is just what's going on in life, and you need to just be okay with it, and then just you're doing your best. Basically, if you're actually trying, you're actually being aware, you're doing your best. That's what matters. And that's the same idea with eating, right? As long as you're doing your best, you make some mistake, it's okay. um but I just wanted to share that, I guess.
Yes, no, I love that. And it's so good to be able to ebb and flow. Like, yeah, maybe it
Yeah.
worked for you for a while, but these mornings with, and then also recognizing like, okay, I could choose that, but I also get to choose being with my son in the morning, being with him and like your
Yeah.
wife, like not leaving your wife to herself.
Right to the, yeah, exactly. And then and then I can get back into it. I mean,
Yeah.
we have plenty of time in this life. So I do want to, without getting out, going too far off topic, I want to ask you to end this podcast guest interview here. What, I guess, I kind of think I know what you would say to this one question. So no, you know what? I'm going to ask it. If you could go back and say anything to your 18-year-old self. All right. So, and that 18-year-old woman would listen. Ellie, what would you say to them?
I would tell her to love herself and to take a gap year.
And to take half your that's great extra. That's a great extra advice. I one of my favoriteest answers out of all the people I've asked, most favorite, was that what you just said. Just love yourself. I just like I'm learning how important love is, and I love that you said that. That's so beautiful, like so simple and so like just beautiful. So it's great advice. If not that I know what great advice is, but that was great advice.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And that's such a good exercise. I feel like everyone should do that right now. Close their eyes and ask like, what would you tell your 18-year-old self? And then tell yourself that right now.
you know, since you brought it up, I'll ask you this, because this is one of my new favorite questions to ask somebody. And then there's a follow-up question to it. So, the person that knows you best. All right. Are you, if you don't mind me asking, are you dating anybody, or are you single?
I'm single.
Okay. So I was going to say, so your boyfriend wouldn't know you best, but, so someone that knows you best, maybe your mom or a best friend, what would they say is the most wonderful thing about you?
I think just like something maybe just like energizing, bringing light or energy, maybe.
Oh, so like bringing a light energy to the room or to the area that you're in, wherever you are at that moment, you bring that light and energy, they would say. Okay. Now, if I challenged that person and said, I don't know if I believe that about Ellie. I don't know about that. Give me an example of what you mean by that. Give me an example of when she said that.
Yeah, I think when I guess just when I go through life, like I want my encounters with people, like I want them to feel better always. Like I want to be, like I want to light them up. So I guess like specific, like a specific story or like.
Yeah, that's that. So that's, yeah. I mean, that would be like yeah. Specific, like what would be an example? Where have you witnessed that? Like, you know what I mean? Where have you witnessed that in Ellie? Like, why? Like, I don't believe you. What has she done that proves that?
Yeah. So I guess this is so tricky. I got an example of me lighting.
Don't feel pressure to answer, because it's a tough question, because it really, what it does, it puts your mind in a place that it usually isn't, right? And in the shoes of somebody else looking at how they see you, you know, and how that, you know, and how you affect, you know. So a lot of times, if you're someone like yourself who loves helping other people, right? Like you said earlier, you want to light other people up. You want to help them eat healthier, lose weight, increase their energy. A lot of times our minds don't think about how the ones that are closest to us and love us the most see us and how they appreciate us. And, you know, I like to say that if you know, so so that's what it puts you in your mindset of that, right? And it's hard, and we're not usually doing that, so that's why it's a really difficult and fun question to answer at the same time.
It's so good. I'm gonna journal. I want to like journal that. What would you say? Have you shared on the show already? What you would say?
I don't know if I've shared because I haven't really asked that too much to my guests. I just asked it only because you mentioned something that made me bring it. Oh, I think love or something. You said something that made me want to ask you that. But I did answer. You know where I got it from is my therapist.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, so I got it from my therapist, and it was our first session ever. She asked me that, and I was like, "Wow, that's good." And so I'll just answer. So it was my wife, of course, my spouse, my partner. She'd be the one that knows me best right now, and she would say that which is wonderful about me is that I love my kids. Like I love being a great dad. Like that's what she would say, and she knows that. And then when she followed up with that next question, I said because she watches me get down on the floor, with them on my knees, wrestling around, tickling, laughing, and really just being in the moment with the kids and loving every single second of it. And that's what she would say. So that was what my answer was. And it was such a great question. I was like, I got to ask this to some people. And you were, I think, the first one. So there you go.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful. Like, I love that. And that there's the imagery of you with your kids. That's amazing.
Yeah, my daughter's almost 5 and my son's almost 2. So they're little. Well, thank you so much, Ellie. I really appreciate you being on.
Thank you, awesome. Justin. Yes. So fun.
Do you want me to take that last piece out, or you want me to just keep it in there?
You can keep it in there. I feel bad. Cool. I didn't answer well, or I didn't.
You were trying to find an example, and maybe you haven't. It's so. Here's what I will say. It's probably a lot more difficult when you're not answering it from your spouse's perspective, but like who were you thinking of? Was it your mom, or was it a friend?
My mom, or like my best friends.
Yeah. So it's probably more difficult because you're with your spouse every single day. Whereas you see your best friend once a week or once every 2 weeks, maybe, or maybe not even that much.
Yeah.
Right. So I can understand how it might be a little bit more difficult to answer. Anybody that I have asked, they were married just because that's their situation of people I've talked to. But so yeah, that's I can see how it could be a little harder to answer that second part. But thank you. Like you were great. Honestly, you should do more of these because you were really, really good. And you get straight to the point. You answered eloquently and it's good.
I really appreciate that.
You wear your heart on your sleeve, which I love. So that's great.
Thank you. And let me know whatever I can do for you.